What's up, guys? It's Asian What If, and I'm back again with another video. This is What If Deku was an OP anti-hero slash villain. And you may be like, why are you doing an anti-hero slash villain instead of just doing villain? Thank you for asking, because you asked such good questions. Anyway, the point is, well, Izuku's not going to just be a straight out villain, like doing villainous things for stupid reasons. But Izuku is definitely going to indulge in villainous activities like killing people, like literally hating all heroes mostly. And it's just going to be an interesting turn of events with a slight couple of changes in the series. So yeah, if you guys don't want to hear all of that and don't like that type of stuff, then you are more than welcome to like click off, because I can understand that this video and like that type of video ain't meant for you. So yeah, but without any further ado, let's get straight into it. We start off with Izuku being born, except contrary to how I normally start all my videos, Izuku was born anything but normal. His life was a struggle from the moment it started. Once Izuku was finally born, he awoke to just one Inko Midoriya. Hisashi had already left years prior to this, and you might be asking, how is Izuku born if he left years prior? Well, he kept coming back and they had flings every now and again. They decided not to try ultimately, but Hisashi left and she ended up getting pregnant, but she didn't tell him because she felt it wasn't his business anymore. So that's how. Izuku was not really normal. He was more quiet, timid child. He didn't really get the knowledge from his father of how to like be boisterous and act like a boy. It's not like he acted like a girl. It's just he was a more solitary type person and didn't really indulge in most things, really only associating with his mother on any type of level. Izuku continued with this lifestyle until he was around the age of 4 years old. Izuku's quiet and calm demeanor attracted people to him, not in a relationship sense, but people always wanted to be Izuku's friend because he was seen as the cool kid. He brushed off any comments that anyone ever told to him, and he really didn't have a problem, like, hanging back and being calm, especially when people were acting a fool of themselves. So Izuku kind of got the reputation of king, like this very powerful person, even though he doesn't ever do anything. This attracted Bakugo to be his friend and actually end up respecting Izuku in this series, to the point where he never bullies Izuku and is actually on pretty friendly terms with him. Izuku kept calm with this, knowing he didn't really care. Izuku turned 4 years old, and that's when he had to go to the Quirk doctor. Izuku went to the Quirk doctor, and it was astonishing. Izuku had a quirk that it was a new generation of quirks that were going to be extraordinarily powerful. Izuku's quirk was limitless amplification, but it was a conditioned type quirk, which means that Izuku could only do this with his voice. Izuku could amplify all of the noises he could make with his mouth to limitless volume. It didn't matter how loud. Izuku could amplify infinitely if he wanted. He's like Black Bolt, but more powerful, and it has more control. It has an on and off switch too. Izuku having this type of power was not really particularly ecstatic. He was kind of angry because Izuku wanted an ability that would increase the life of his mother and himself, like a clone quirk or something that he could use to get a really good job and take care of his mother. Izuku didn't really care much for his quirk and allowed them to do the test without really paying too much attention to what they were doing, considering he didn't really care. That's when the doctor, who is actually All Might's doctor, that's the same doctor, he found out about all this and informed All Might. I mean, not All Might, All For One. And All For One called him back saying, do not let the boy get away. He is a valuable asset. I need his quirk. If you let him go, you're next. The doctor quickly scrambled and called the League of Villains, quickly getting Shigaraki. By this point, the League of Villains is already pretty much formed, though. Like, all of the people who'd be in it. Like, Dobby's in there. Stain joined up a while ago because, in this version, they're much more calmer and cooler and pick their targets more carefully. Because in this version, All Might never gets injured, at all, period. Because, of the fight. So, because of that, they have to be more careful And that's why Stan is cool with being on their team, because they're not just killing people at random. They're more precise. And like, Dabi, that one guy, like Mr. Compress, the dude who teleports, Shigaraki, and a couple others, like miscellaneous people, and a couple others. They are told to converge on Izuku's location once he starts walking to his house, and to take him, right, preferably alive. Izuku is just, wandering around. But at the exact same time, when Izuku was leaving the doctor's appointment, the heroes got a notification about his presence as well, because the heroes have people who work like you gotta understand, the doctors who work at the Quirk agency, like where they assess your quirks, the doctor's office, they have contacts with UA and like the Hero Society. They that's how the heroes know about every person who has a quirk. Because of this, it allows them to assess whether or not they could be dangerous in the future, and allows them to keep profiles on them, making sure to like be careful just in case they turn evil, and in some cases making sure they turn good. Izuku was on this list, and he was at the very tippity top. Everyone assumed that he could be the next All Might if he was a good guy, but if he was a bad guy, he could be even more powerful than All For One. This is why they didn't want to take the chance and decided they were going to do what they did with Hawks. They were going to take him and train him to be a force of good no matter what. They decided they were going to take him right then. They didn't want to do it at first because it was a rash action, but they knew that if the League of Villains found out about it, they would act just as quickly, so they needed to do it. Inko was grabbing a young Izuku who was grabbing his mother's hand as they were walking down, leaving the doctor's office. Once they began to leave the doctor's office, that's when stuff really started to pop off. Izuku and Inko walked out of the door and walked down for a little bit, and everything seemed perfectly calm. Inko even commented on how the day was regular, but it felt good outside. It was a good day, and everyone was having fun. It was a normal busy day. That's when all of a sudden, Mr. Compress throws down a lot of big things falling from the sky, creating a lot of panic and chaos. This causes all of the people to quickly rush out of the way, and Inko has to duck over to Izuku onto a wall to make sure he doesn't get trampled or ran over. This is when the fight officially breaks out. All Might's on his way along with Aizawa, Best Genius, Endeavor, and all of the other top heroes, along with the League of Villains. And they appear in the exact same place at the exact same time, which is a little bit further up the street from Izuku and his mother. That's when All Might and All For One actually square off. And All For One did actually come because he didn't trust them to handle it on their own, seeing as All Might was going to be showing up. Because he has a tracking quirk, and he put a tracker on All Might when they fought. So he knows about All Might's movements all the time. That's why he came. He knew they wouldn't be able to handle it. He ran at All Might, delivering the first punch as they started to go at it rapidly with no sign of stopping. They just kept running at each other relentlessly, not stopping at all. They were just going ham. And Izuku didn't know what to do. They were fighting, but Inko was just holding them close as the people ran away. Inko was finally had some room because everyone was pretty much cleared. That's when All Might and All For One started to really get serious, as the others started to fight as well. They started sending out massive shockwaves. Yes, this series is the reality of what would happen if heroes and villains fought at full power. And like I said, this is a non-weakened All Might who thinks everybody's already left the area. Because, again, he's been seeing in the corner of his eye people running away, and he figures the area is clear. And also, there are heroes clearing out the area somewhat, there are a couple heroes keeping a perimeter, so he assumes that it's safe to go relatively to use more powerful strikes to try to injure his immortal foe if he can. He continues on fighting All For One as the fight gets more and more intense, as they start sending out bigger shockwaves and things. All Might lands a good clean hit on All For One's jaw, sending a shockwave hitting into a building, and it starts to make the building fall and crumble. It hits another building, knocking it over, as Inko sees this and quickly grabs Izuku, ducking to the side. and she does this successfully. This is a this is an in shape Inko, so of course she can actually perform these types of feats. Izuku is just sitting there with his mother holding him as she smiles at him. Saying, Izuku, are you okay? And that's when a piece of debris falls from the sky and is about to hit Izuku when she manages to slow it down enough to not crush him with her quirk. And you might be like, well, isn't her quirk to attract small objects? Well, it's not limited to small objects. She just has such low-level telekinesis that it can only attract small objects. But her adrenaline is rushing right now, and everyone knows that quirks work on emotions, so naturally her abilities got stronger in a time of distress and need. She slowed it down just enough for it to not end up killing Izuku outright. But the boulder was on top of Izuku and he couldn't do anything about it. The boulder was stopping him from moving and he couldn't get up. He couldn't see his mother. She was screaming for Izuku, trying to lift the boulder relentlessly, but she was already getting exhausted since she had just gone past what she normally does with her quirk by a lot. The piece of debris was actually quite big. It was around 2 of her, and I don't know how tall Inko is, but assuming she's at least 5 feet, that's at least 10 feet of rubble. That's straight concrete. More, at least a good 500 pounds. She can't lift that, even with an adrenaline rush she hasn't been trained to. Izuku's stuck under it, and he's screaming for his mother to help him, but she can't do anything. All Might and All For One get even more intense in the fight, trying harder and harder to beat the other as the other villains continue to fight. Aizawa sees in the corner of his eye after pushing back Stain slightly that there seems to be people in trouble. He wraps up Stain in his not really cloth. He wraps him up in his cloth and throws him into a building, sending him away for a little bit. He starts running over to Izuku and his mother, trying to evacuate them, knowing that the fight isn't as important as their lives. That's when All Might and All For One clash one bigger time, sending out a big shockwave. The shockwave is so intense that it actually ends up hitting Inko in the back, sending her flying. But it was so powerful that it actually ripped her legs off, like by her legs, and she was sent into a building, killing her. And that's brutal. It really is, but that's how that would work with how powerful All Might is. All Might and All For One didn't even notice because they were so focused, because they have to concentrate because they're facing a very powerful opponent. That's when Aizawa notices and he sees it, and he begins to begins to think about the death that just happened and how it was his fault. But then he gets distracted by seeing that the boy is still underneath him. So he continuously tries to go over there and save the boy when Izuku is wondering what's going on, and he turns around screaming for his mother, but she's not listening. So Izuku uses his quirk, even though she told him not to. Izuku can't use his quirk because Izuku has unlimited amplification of sound. So if Izuku yelled aggressively, then he could send a very big shockwave that would not only blow everything back, but would definitely rupture your organs if it didn't outright kill you. That's how violent the sound waves created by Izuku are. Izuku got up. Izuku used it to blow the debris off him, but he saw his mother's legs and he got happy only to see that she wasn't there. Izuku turned around to see the most horrid sight in his entire life. His mother dead, buried into a wall, and the heroes continuing to fight, no one noticing. Aizawa notices this and realizes that the boy needs to get evacuated. He has to focus. He begins running towards the boy, and that's when Izuku's eyes widen. He sees his mother's death, but his mind can't comprehend it. He doesn't understand. Where did his mother go? Izuku begins to panic, breathing really hard and starting to hyperventilate. Izuku doesn't know what to do as tears begin to fall down from his face, and he falls to his knees, and he just screams once, "Mom." And the simple word is so strong that Izuku sends out a shockwave that blows back everything around him. Luckily for Aizawa, he was behind Izuku, so he didn't get the full brunt. But the other heroes and villains, they were right next to it. People like Endeavor, Best Genius, Stain, Shigaraki, Mr. Compress or whatever his name is, Dobby, they got sent flying into buildings. And All Might and All for One got sent flying for miles. As they were sent flying, everything around Izuku, the ground around him was completely destroyed. Only a pillar that Izuku was sitting on was still safe. And that was just with Izuku mildly in control of his powers. Imagine if he condensed that blast down. Izuku didn't know what was happening as he just continued to scream and yell, sending out more and more shockwaves. Aizawa was struggling to get over to him and trying to make sure he could save the boy because he didn't consider him a threat. He considered him a boy in trouble and he wanted to help him. He made his way over to the boy and he got to it close to Izuku. He used his quirk to stop Izuku's and he picked Izuku up and he said, "Shh, it's gonna be okay. I promise. Even though it doesn't feel like it right now, it's gonna be okay." At this point, you might be wondering how they can talk. All of the villains and everything are incapacitated for the moment, so they can talk. Aizawa quickly rushes to the patrol and borders to pretty much get Izuku out of there. And Aizawa doesn't really need to worry because everyone's been blown back and the fight's been reset anyway. And now that the League of Villains doesn't have All for One, then they're pretty much gonna get stomped anyway. So they retreat as the heroes pursue, as All Might and All for One land miles away from the city, as All for One realizes that the power was much stronger than he thought it was, making him even more interested in having it. He begins to race off there, leaving All Might behind as All Might begins to run. As I was running through the crowd trying to get Izuku to some kind of medical facility to see if he's alright. That's when Izuku, it all hits him at the exact same time, as Aizawa has to keep his eyes on him to keep him from killing everyone in the entire area along with himself in the blast that will ensue. But I think I'm gonna pause right there, but I just wanted to give some side notes before I ended this episode. For example, Izuku's powers allow him to do things very, very quickly. Izuku doesn't really require headphones or anything for his quirk, seeing as he naturally has very, very strong eardrums that don't burst even under the loudest of sounds, no matter what. Izuku's a regular person aside from that, though. He doesn't really have any special abilities. Besides that, those are his only special abilities because of the fact that his quirk is more specialized. Izuku has the potential to do city-wide damage if he really tried and if he focused the blast. Izuku is extraordinarily powerful, but it has its limits. I'm gonna give you a small preview of the next one. Aizawa already got Izuku to where he needed to get to, and he was going to drop him off, but Izuku was hanging on to him so fiercely that he knew that he wasn't going to be able to pry the boy off. Aizawa sighed, saying after all he's been through, he deserves some stability. Fine. He grabs the boy sitting down as he lets him cry into his shirt, sighing slightly at the fact that this ruined all of his shirts, as he begins to ponder what was going on and why the fight broke out and how many people died. He begins to question how All Might could do something as reckless as begin a fight in the middle of a city residential zone and not even attempt to take the fight elsewhere. He begins to get slightly upset at Izuku having to see the side of his mother die because someone else was being reckless. He gets angrier and angrier, but he realizes he can't show his anger because if he does, Izuku might get angry. And if Izuku gets angry, he might kill everyone here. So he begins to calm down, thinking to himself, this poor boy, why? Oh, why is his fate this bad? He clearly doesn't deserve this. It's the definition of unfair. But there it is. Izuku continues to cry in his shoulder and in his chest, but Aizawa doesn't stop him, just letting him cry until he eventually passes out from exerting so much energy and using his quirk. But with that, I think I'm going to end this episode. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all of that other stuff. If you're interested in a part 2, just let me know. Comment it down below. Like to get this into the algorithm and out there, and make sure to tell your friends and everybody else. And with that being said, I'm going to leave it here.